wondered what would I do if I woke up every single day being told that I had 3 months to live?
Mm,
And would I look at my life loving every piece of it? Would I regret not taking action on something? Or would I sit there and go, oh my God, Victoria, how stupid of you to just not do the thing? Like, what was the worst that was going to happen? That maybe it wouldn't work out or that maybe you would fail, but it wouldn't kill you. Like, cancer can kill you.
mm,
You realize how inconsequential the fears are and that there is this world of possibilities if you just allow yourself to embrace it,
mm,
even knowing it could blow up in your face, but you won't die from it. But then when you're faced with your own mortality and death, is blowing yourself up actually worth it in the end? Because it could also be monstrously successful. And I think so much of myself has sat around in my own judgment and fear around my inaction and my imposter syndrome and just worry, which now is so useless because at any given moment, it can all just be done.
mm. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting too, like the difference between like taking action or also taking imperfect action, right? Anything we've done was supposed to happen, it didn't happen any other way. So I feel like I've been paralyzed in a couple different ways sometimes before, to where like I've been reactionary doing all the time. And then I feel like when I grown and healed and woke up, it's like my biggest gut check right now is like, is this in alignment for me? And I got hung up on that recently too, to where it was like, there's some things top of mind. I know I'm supposed to be creating something, but is it in full alignment what I should be doing? And I sat with that for a long time to where I felt like that was even paralyzing too, to where it's like we're here to create, right? Like we were made in God's image. We were here to create and co-create with the universe. So it's like, can we create something the wrong way either? Like, is there any wrong ways, or is it just taking action and perfect action? What's alive for us in that moment too?
Yeah, because if you really sat with yourself and like gave yourself this shorter window, if you like
Right.
had that mindset every single day, I think so much of our energy would change. It's like you're tuning into a different frequency because every moment is precious, whether, you could die tomorrow because we're always sitting there with that idea of like, there's tomorrow. It's okay. Like I have time. So we're pushing it and pushing it. So you have to ask yourself, first off, what's the energy around why I'm pushing it away? And then
Hmm.
also, you might not have a tomorrow. And there's actually a woman who recently passed, and she was just like stepping into her life, like leading breath work. She left her corporate job, was full send, terrified, but so happy to be in full send, even though every day she was so unsure, but she was happy and getting happier. And then one day she goes to a spa, sits in the sauna, and she never leaves that sauna.
Mm.
And that's such a weird mind fuck for me because we're constantly waiting for a tomorrow when something will feel right.
Right.
You could just walk into a sauna one day or walk into your car or
Right.
cross the street and everything is taken from you. Not necessarily in death, but you could be paralyzed. You could end up in a coma. Like there's so many things that could happen that could sure, in a way they could change your life for the better, depending on what's needed and being asked of you. But then you're going, man, I really wish I wrote that book and now I'm paralyzed.
Yeah.
Like, so I have to either write it a different way or you don't write it at all.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like the balance. And how do we even find that between the different polarities? There can be like fear-based urgency, like time is going to run out and time isn't real. It's only existent on this plane of existence, which is pure chaos. And that's what this plane is, but it's also perfect in its creation as well. It's like, hey, time is going to run out. So let's do some stuff. Or the other balance of everything is perfect. This isn't our first run through on this. This isn't, our only lifetime and so forth, where it's like, where do we find that middle balance of, we're here to create. We can use that as like a cue point for sure. It's like here, I want to make the most of this lifetime and so forth. But also at any perfect moment, I used to have framing too, to where it was like, if something, when I would look on paper, like quote unquote bad would happen, I'm like, oh, God's closing that door. Rather than there is no illusion of control. It's illusion, right? To where it's like anything can happen at any moment. Does that mean that we're being steered away? Does that mean that it's time to put our head down and keep pushing it forward into our mission? Or does that mean that we are continuing in flow and creation? We just create what's alive for us in that moment, right? That's something I've been personally dealing with where it's like I need to create isn't in alignment using this, I don't want to say fear-based, but urgency-based practice of like, hey, we got things to do versus doing the wrong thing. And I don't believe that's even available either. So I don't think we can really, we can't mess it up. I don't think we can mess it up. But we're here to create, we're here to impact, right? And that feeling alive is a different sort of energy out of obligation or urgency or fear, but also passiveness and like apathetic and not doing it either, right? So
Yeah.
it's kind of the conversation around Dharma too, right? Like when I initially heard Dharma, I was like, okay, what's my purpose? What's my life purpose? And I do believe we have certain, you know, karma to let loose and also certain things for this lifetime that we're supposed to move through. But it's like, what's the middle balance? How do we do it, V?
Oh man, I think we just we do it all.
Yeah, right.
No, and I sat with that for a while too. I read all of these books on dharma and purpose and finding your why. And I think, there's something so beautiful about doing that, but at the same time, I see it as people setting New Year's resolutions.
Hmm.
Eventually, you get so stressed out about achieving or accomplishing or hitting those resolutions or those goals. And if you don't, then you're like, I failed, I fucked up. Okay, I'll just do it next year. And I think even with Dharma, people chase purpose. And I'm like, the purpose is life. It's
Yeah,
whatever feels alive as you move
yeah,
through each day and what feels good. And then anything that doesn't, you let it go, or you just don't give it that space that day because maybe that's a thing for tomorrow and that's okay. So everyone is always saying, what's my purpose in this lifetime? What's my why? And I'm like, you can have that's like an everyday thing. We're always evolving and changing. Your purpose in your 20s is not going to be in your 30s and your 40s and your 50s. But the
yeah,
attachment to one specific idea, modality, personality is it's like so one-dimensional being such a
yeah,
5D 6D world we have.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like the biggest topic that's alive for me too, and I chatted about this previously in my book and the program getting ready to launch again called The Chase, and it was like it's about the chase, it's about creating in real time because we're always creating in real time, whether we think we're doing it or not. And I always say like stop the drift, right? And there's like one thing just kind of going through life, but we are creating in that moment as well too, to where it's like not being so outcome based and ultimately like trust and faith in the universe, God source, to where like if we are taking steps into creation, we are putting the energetics out behind that, but are we doing that passively or intentionally? Either way, we're creating, right? So it's like the thing's alive for us in that moment, creating, and if that goes a different route and so forth, just like being open to being surprised as well, but like kind of taking ownership and being intentional and awareness of what we're creating in that moment as well too, right?
Yeah, 100%. Because, it's nice to know like what your desired outcome is, but not being attached in how you get
Right,
there.
right.
So, like with this whole like what does the chase look like? And then being open and saying, wow, I can literally create it any absolute way that I want to. And then whatever the outcome ends up being, that's what it was meant to be because I'm open to possibilities, open to surrender, open to trust, faith, all of the emotions, but we don't really give ourselves the bandwidth to feel that deeply into ourselves, whether it's because society, family, or just our own limiting beliefs that we put on ourselves of that's not attainable, that's not for me. And I'm like, then your outcome will be suffering.
Hmm. Yeah. It's like eyes wide open, like the whole time. Eyes wide
Yeah.
open. It was really interesting because that program I referenced, it was super impactful. It's been a couple years since I ran it, and I was like really sitting on it for the past couple weeks. I'm like, I would love to put this out and start doing some impact and like working with people in this manner. And like even yesterday, like I had a dear, dear friend of mine. She's an incredible team member that we have that's kind of moving on to her next chapter. And we're kind of having her going away, event and stuff like that yesterday. And she came up to me, and one of the first things she was referencing was that program that she went through a couple years ago and give me really heartfelt words. But it was like, if I would have just kind of going through the drift, I'm easy to, you know, it's hard for me to receive also in that impact, but on the flip side of that, if I would have just missed that subtle nudge, right? Like
Mhm.
God's talking to us at all points in time. Are our eyes wide open? Are we awareness of it too? Right. Because I feel like people I did at least. I'm like, if I'm not in deep meditation listening, is God speaking? I'm like, dude, all day, every day. Is our eyes wide open to nudges or pathways or, one of my prayers is like being able to be interruptible. Cause sometimes like, especially in the business world, you know how this goes, V, where it's like stick to your agenda, time blocking and so forth. Like don't get distracted and so forth. But I'm like, this is the greatest adventure that we could ever be on in our entire life. At any moment, like every single moment, God's speaking to us in sources, but at any moment things could change in the best fluid way possible to where it's like, hey, this is what it's alive for me in this moment. This is what I'm pressing towards, but being able to be dynamic in that frame as well, right? Because
Yeah.
any point it can change. And sometimes people like, take that as a daunting way to where it's like nothing's predictable and that could be like fear-based, but it's also like, what's the best way I could be surprised today? What's the coolest way God could speak to me? What's going on? What's can happening? Like finding the Easter eggs throughout life, you know?
Yeah, well, and like what you were saying about eyes wide open, it also makes me think of like, I'm like these two eyes, but also this third eye.
Hmm.
Because when, there's so many beautiful ways to connect to spirit, and a lot of people are like, I have to be sitting in prayer, I have to sit in meditation, I have to do the things. And I'm like, there's eyes wide open, like third eye open in that capacity. And then there's all of it just in every day of treating life like a prayer and a meditation and paying attention to those nudges. Because, like you said, her giving you that feedback was a third eye nudge that you needed to pay attention and say, yeah, this is a huge impact. What's stopping me from allowing it to be impactful again? What is
Hmm.
my, do I have a resistance? Do I have a
Yeah.
judgment? What is my
Yeah.
perception of myself and my desired outcome? And you never know what's going to be part of that journey towards that. And if you are open to seeing everything in life, because we'll always ask, like, what was there's like a saying or a quote, I don't remember it verbatim, but it basically says, I asked God to teach me peace and he gave me suffering. I asked God to teach me this and he gave me love. Like there's always that flip side because he's not just going to hand you all of the good stuff. In order for you to truly appreciate, you have to suffer a little bit and get
Yeah.
strong. If you want courage, you have to be faced with big challenges that push you. And if you're willing to allow yourself to surrender into that, then everything opens up. And then your third eye is like, oh, like we're
Yeah.
heading in a direction.
Yeah. It's so cool. You're obviously the third eye in the mention with that too, but it just that topic being so alive for me, obviously, you know about my background and just being really framed in on certain programming. But it was even crazy because last week I was going into a detail in the study because what I do deeply resonate with is a lot of Jesus's teachings, Yeshua's teachings were, mistranslated and so forth with good, probably good intentions, maybe some poor, but even the verse that really stands out, it's I even pulled it up right here so I don't misquote. It's like Matthew 6:22, but it goes, "The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light." And this is interesting, right? Because like third eye, those types of phrases would have been triggering to me in my previous experience, right? These topics and so forth. But it's just like understanding, and this is quantum physics. All the studies are coming out, like proving that our consciousness is tethered in. Like this, our consciousness, what is the being or the source of the soul that's observing the thoughts that come in. And so many times we think our mind is us, right? Like our minds are our thoughts, and obviously from the heart as well. But it's back on the same thing. It's like if you're seeing with the single eye, if you're connected back, if you're on that consciousness level where the healing, the thoughts, the creativity, the divine inspiration thoughts come through, rather than us living in this 3D world where it's like really those two North Stars. It's like there's nothing to fear. Like there's nothing to fear. Any ancient practice, religions, if you want to quote it that way and so forth, like understanding that we're not done after this lifetime, right? So if I'm not afraid of this avatar body, and I'm not afraid of time and urgency, which only exists on this plane as well, it's freeing. And it could be apathetic. Like I felt that before too, towards like what matters, why I'm not this body, this lifetime's so short, like days are flying by, right? But if there's no urgency, it's like I just get to create and I get to be fully present. And it takes the fear off of it by making the wrong action or imperfect action and those types of things. It's just like it's all right here. Seeing with thy eye be single.
Yeah.
Being connected back with source. It's like, even back in the day, it was like I don't block out time with God anymore. Like, of course, I love my meditation and time there, but like, no, I'm inviting God and source to be throughout my whole day. My single eye be open because it's like throughout the whole day. How insulting is it that I'm gonna like block out 15 minutes here, there, and that's my time with God? Like, I do think intentional time is powerful rather than like walking throughout the whole day like other people speaking to me, what's happening, full presence, creation. This is alive for me. Okay, great. Let's create it. A way different embodiment for me to lead my life, and also has impacted everything. I think we talked about this in a previous episode too. We talked about, presence and so forth. So I won't go too deep there, but the single eye, and what people might think is like, if they're not familiar with this, are you seeing out of one eye, or are you really connected with source and you're really seeing beyond it? It's almost like I kind of felt, I've told you this a lot, like I kind of feel like I'm a little removed from this scenario that can see into it from where I'm in, but it's just like being hyper, like what's my awareness outside of the current experience as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, we always have to remember life is a living prayer. And every day we get to show up in gratitude because everything is already perfect because we were made perfect. But then we sit there and go, nope, this isn't good enough. I have to change this. This needs some altering. And then we start to like go inward, but in this punishing way. And God is constantly saying, let me love you. Like, walk with me, like let's take these steps together. And there's either that stubbornness and pride of saying, no, I have to do it myself, I'm going to figure it out, or we become completely disconnected and we lose our faith because the suffering becomes so unimaginable and so all-consuming that we're like, well, if God loves me, why would he have me suffer? And it's like,
Hmm.
but, like I said earlier, like maybe you asked for it, but you didn't realize you were asking for it because in how
Hmm.
you pray and how you think brings those experiences in, and not to punish, but to show you, hey, I'll give you the tools, but
Hmm.
you're the one who has to put it together and build something with it. So if you remember that not only are you perfect, but every moment is an opportunity to pray, to think, to listen, to observe, connect with the elements, however you want to do it, dance, sing, take mushrooms. Like it's all a piece of a sacrament that comes from all that source is. It's just how you choose to be intentional with it.
Hmm. Yeah. Creating and surrendering, like both in the way, because like, there's been plenty of different ways I can look back at. I did this prayer and then I got into an experience that didn't look at the way that I thought it would play out, right? Like in my 3D mind, I'm like, I'm gonna pray this is what's gonna happen. And ultimately, there are so many pathways in giving that away to God and source of like, oh, this is how that worked out. Oh, I made this prayer. I used to joke around about it. I'm like, I'm not praying for strength anymore. Then I get more battles, right? Then I'm gonna get more struggles, right? Like I'm gonna get wisdom, then I get more problems to solve, those types of things, which obviously I'm being playful about, but it's like surrendering the outcome, but also stepping into that creation and faith at the same time too, right? Like all what that pathway looks like. Because how boring would it be if like we did a prayer? First off, we're not God's consultant, right? Like, give me this thing, this way, this forward. Like it doesn't need that, right? But on the flip side of that, it's like just acknowledging putting the pathway into it and then just letting it be flow and dynamic from there, and being open to different pathways. Like, even Ram Dass with his stroke, right? Like he has incredible teachings afterwards, how that was like a huge gift. There's another story I was just talking about last week. While an individual was like, and this, I say this very, very like empathetic, and I have no idea what that would feel like, but it was so powerful for an individual that got deeply handicapped like out of nowhere in the morning. And his message was the night before, I was praying for God to transform me. And this is what happened. He had just such a positive, like full faith frame on that, which I couldn't imagine being in that type of situation. But understanding that everything that is happening is perfect, like we can't mess this up, and just being open to whatever pathway that might happen as well, right? Because we don't know. We don't know. And that can be playful. That can be scary for individuals that were always white knuckled. But for white knuckled like this, we're not in a position to receive either, to where we can't control it. That's agony. That's hell on earth, is thinking we can control things and the outcome that we think is going to happen. And it's like, man, I can't live there anymore.
No, it's exhausting. And
Yeah.
that, it makes me think about this course that I'm in right now, and we're talking about the topic of compassion. And there's so many different ways in our lives that compassion can show up. How like the compassion we need to show ourselves and how we live, how we parent, how we love, how we judge our bodies, the way we nourish or don't nourish ourselves. And where can you allow compassion to come in? But with compassion comes a very deep and equally as powerful parallel of forgiveness, and the forgiveness that you give to yourself, not knowing any better, or forgiveness to the person that may have hurt you. Because you can't, like, one can't exist without the other. Because in order to forgive, you have to feel compassion. You have to understand it. So, it's like that comes back to that prayer. If someone's asking for, compassion, they're going to give you a lot of hard lessons and then go, but now can you forgive yourself? And it's so
Yeah.
hard to forgive yourself versus forgiving someone else. Like, I struggle with it all the time.
Hmm.
And I think that that ability to deepen into that place of prayer and say, everything is perfect, everything is as it's supposed to be. This is a part of the story. And I asked for it, even though it's not being delivered exactly how I was anticipating. But how much deeper can I go into compassion? How much more deeply can I forgive myself? And then ultimately love myself so that I see everything as divinely perfect. And I no longer struggle. I no longer suffer. I just allow it to be what it is. And then it's endless possibilities where you go, of course it's possible because I'm possible. Like,
Mm.
I'm here in this
Yeah.
world, completely perfect. So anything I do ultimately is a reflection of that perfection. And like, not in the ego perfection of just perfect for me and where I'm meant to serve it.
This is so huge. The compassion cheat code, ultimately like self-love as well, was like I try to talk about this as much as I possibly can because, obviously, most of my work being in the fitness space outside of other things, and it's like seeing individuals coming and starting a program, and the last thing the world needs is another nutrition program or workout program. It's like, why are we at our adherence and self-sabotaging behaviors? And like for the longest time in my life, I hated myself for the longest time, up until probably the time we connected at that retreat. And it was the biggest thing where I had this self-sabotaging behavior, actions that were out of integrity for myself, out of alignment. And the biggest shift for me was like nerd on the nervous system, and then get into the cycle between stress, shame, sabotage, and being in that vicious cycle most individuals are, is like individuals don't have a hard time being hard on themselves, right? Like I would say there's no amount of shame or judgment that you could cast my way that I haven't done myself, right? But that biggest shift was like literally, I mean, full-time example, like had this reoccurring self-sabotaging behavior that kept coming up, and it didn't matter what I would do for people, like my heart, like I was in service, would do anything for anybody, like know who I am to my core, but there was this like one behavior pattern that kept coming up. And the biggest shift for me was when I really looked back and I was like, I looked at my nervous system, that's, on a base level, but I was like, holy smokes, Tyler, like you have lived your whole life in your fight or flight state. Like I didn't even know what a parasympathetic nervous system felt like. Obviously a different household growing up. Then I, opened up a brick and mortar studio when I was like 23, and then had been in that cycle for so long. And that was the biggest shift that happened for me when I look back and I was like, Tyler, yeah, this makes sense. You've been doing all these things in a flight or flight state. You aren't like, how many times do people take actions and they're like, that never felt like me. Why did I even do that? That wasn't me, and so forth. And I would try every discipline action, everything. I remember being in service every Sunday and Wednesday, just like praying, like, God, take this from me, and so forth. And honestly, that first breathwork experience that you're on the mat next to me, where I got that vision, and I like that vision through that somatic breathwork experience. And that's why, breathwork became so alive for me. I know it is for you as well, to where I was like, God, please heal me. Like, take this from me. Like, fix me, fix me. And it was this whole vision quest where there's a sword on the ground. It was like, you're whole. If you want to cut the lines on this stuff, go for it. And then I went through this corny, hero's journey in that journey. But it was the biggest shift where I looked back and it was compassion for myself, to where I was like, Tyler, look how hard you've been going. Look at all the things you've been doing under your flight or flight state. You've been your nervous system is wrecked this whole time. Yeah, you've had these actions. And the minute that I had self-love, that one toxic behavior just disappeared. It got easy. It just was never existing again. And it was like the craziest shift where it's like that compassion code, self-love for self, is like that can change anything that we want to get rid of. It's like being love and compassion for yourself, way easier said than done. But that shift just completely wrecked that behavior from me, moving forward too. So I feel like that compassion theme, obviously I went on a tangent, but the compassion theme is so alive, so alive.
Yeah, because with it, and it's, and I know I've mentioned it before to you how my whole motto, like my journey right now is all about into those the like pieces of submission and surrender. And now having this compassion and forgiveness and what you're sharing, about like this vision with the sword and cutting, and it's like you've already got it. And then it just takes us back into that remembrance of like not just the perfection, but everything is there should we choose to take it. All you have to do is get out of the controlling mind, the overthinking mind, and you drop into the heart. And in dropping into the heart, you're in your body. And that takes a level, like a deep level of surrender, because you have to be able to trust. And the trust comes first for ourselves.
Hmm.
Like, do you trust yourself enough to pick up the sword to be able to slay these dragons that you keep trying to outsource the healing and the battle, conquering the battle to someone else or something else? And then Spirit God turns it around and goes, here, take it. It's yours. It's always been
Hmm.
yours. But you have to drop in. You have to show yourself compassion, love yourself enough, and then surrender to that embodiment. And it's a really
Hmm.
hard thing to do because there's so many emotions that come with it. And almost all, like, I think a lot of us go, but am I ready? Like, am I
Hmm.
ready to let this thing go that has been a
Right.
part of my identity for
Right.
so long? Like, am I really ready to journey into figuring out who I am authentically when I let go of these stories and of these fears that have run my life, but have kept me in this suffering? And then through that surrender is that submission to everything is possible. Everything in the quantum realm is at your fingertips. And if you can submit yourself to that and then surrender the control, you have unconditional love and support and compassion to forgive everything that was before and start over.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, the identity piece stood out to me like crazy in that too. Because like often in the work and also on that program, like the chase, it's like individuals will like look at key factors that like I got asked a hard question. It was like, who are you? And you can't say what you do, right? So like I would have said I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a leader, all these kind of things. I didn't know how to answer that question. And it's like, oh yeah, like I'm living life in alignment. Everybody hears that. It's in alignment for you. But people, I don't think we've had the opportunity enough as humans in general to where we can really outline like who we are. Like who are we at our core essence, right? And I feel like the drifting is so common where individuals haven't had the opportunity to be like really check in who are you? Who are you in your essence? Because we adapt to our identity to the things that we do or even personality. Like we are not our personality even to begin with either. Like I feel like there's common threads on this is who I am, take it or leave it. I'm like, is that really who you are? Like on those certain personality traits and so forth, to where it's like, at the beginning of that process, we'll start with like really trying to get alignment, tap into the nervous system, and then we're like, okay, who are you? And you can't say any of the things that you do. So typically what I'll ask people is like, what's the thing that makes you the most angry? Can you give me an example, V?
Oh man, disrespect. People,
Disrespect.
disrespectful people, or yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that's easier to start, right? So then that might point toward an actual core value of your essence that you really, really value respect. Like you respect others and you're like really passionate about that, right? So that process can be really helpful, but it's like, how many times have we had the opportunity to like really even tap into who are we are in our essence? Right? Without the things that we do. And then you start from there and then everything else can get easier too. So it's almost like kind of what you're implying too. It's like the breakdown, the forgetting to remember, the breakdown, the forgetting to remember, because like you were mentioning, like we're limitless beings here. Like this is the most radical adventure that we could be on. And we are so quick and I'm sure with good intentions, but different like personality tests or like occupational tests in school and stuff like that, that we've been like programmed from the minute that we are. Did we ever get the opportunity to really like tap into who we really are? Before we start to create and so forth too. Because I think that can be help. If anybody's watching or listening back, it's like, okay, I want to create, but I don't know what to do. And what's an alignment for me? And like, that's kind of a hard place to start if we don't even know who we are at our core essence either,
Yeah.
which we're not necessarily boxed into anything at that point too. Right. So it's like this whole expansion of anything we want to create and anything we want to be is at our fingertips. But I feel like it needs to start there, you know?
Yeah, I mean it has to, because you have to sit with those things long enough to then start to map out like that journey and find that place. So like you said, you're not just drifting anymore, trying on a million different things and then settling and you're like, well, this feels good enough for now. Like I'm comfortable here. And then
Hmm.
comfortable is boring. Comfortable
Hmm.
is sad and it's lonely and it's empty. And I think, it may seem like a silly example to use, but I also think that's why a lot of people maybe will go out into the world and cheat, let's say, right? Or hurt others. And you're like, why would you do that? And it's because they're not in alignment with what's true for them. Maybe they have a different desire. Maybe they love their partner, but they want a different dynamic that might not seem traditional and acceptable. But you're kind of like, oh, yeah, I want to explore non-monogamy. I love my partner, but I love this freedom that comes from this. And I want to step into that expansion of myself. And we don't. And we like sit in that suffering because we're denying the truth of who we are, what we want. But we usually don't figure it out until something bad has already happened. And then we're like, oh, right, that's what I was looking for. So to like reverse engineer it before the like that catastrophe kind of thing happens, then you start to know yourself authentically because like you were saying a lot of people when you get introduced they're immediately like oh I'm the CEO of this, I do this, I do that, and I'm like how boring. I'm like tell me
Mm.
your trauma, man.
Yeah.
Like tell me what's alive, tell me the pain, and then
Right.
we can really talk about it because I want to know you that way,
Hmm.
because then I feel I get to love like the authenticity of your soul and
Yeah.
not the perceived projection of this persona.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a line that I always like to use is like, I do a lot of things, but what I do is not who I am. It's just like, it can be applicable to anything. And then also like, even like what you mentioned in regards to like, as far as stepping out of like romantic relationships and stuff like that, out of integrity, it's like the communication and the honest vulnerability of communication got so much easier for me when I wasn't hiding anymore. And I was hiding because I didn't know who I was. And there's this whole thing where I'll post up every so often. It's like, I'm sorry. I was doing the best I could without knowing who I really am. I'm doing my best job to know who I am every day. And then it's like repeat every day. It's like every day, like, yeah, I'm learning more about who I am, but also the dynamic of that can change as well. But it's like once you really know who you are and you have that compassion piece, I feel like that's a gateway and like a cheat code into better, vulnerable, full expression conversations to where it's like any person on this planet is like at your core, like, very rarely do I think of anybody's like evil to their core. I do think maybe there are some interesting cases there, but it's like, no, if you really sat with self, had love and compassion for yourself, and actually saw who you are to your core, there's no hiding. You don't have to hide anything at that point, right? What's for you is for you. If it's not, it's not. But then at that point, those conversations that some people guard and don't feel open about, it's all just guarding and like walls up that we ultimately get the opportunity to tear down and pull layers back of the onion to where we can be our full expression, right? But if you're not even in your full expression and you don't know who you are, it's gonna be really hard to hold space for someone else in their full expression too, you know?
100%. Because then you're projecting this
Yeah,
version of the persona. And it's
yeah,
like, and it just made me think about, with the compassion piece, maybe there is like this fifth little drop in right there where that all takes vulnerability because even with forgiveness, like asking for forgiveness is very vulnerable. That is
hmm,
a very raw place to go to because maybe they don't want to forgive you. Maybe it's really uncomfortable and humbling and uncomfortably like, oh, I hate it. Like I don't really feel like I need to be sorry, even though you know you are. So it's like, where can you bring that piece in as well
yeah,
to express what you need and be vulnerable through forgiveness or just compassion to be like, hey, I'm feeling this certain type of way, or I need more of this, or I need less of this, or I'm unfulfilled. And that, like, whether that's in a relationship or with your job, and it's not I'm no longer happy because a lot of people immediately get defensive and shut down because they're like, what do you mean you want to do this or you don't want that? But I think there's a piece that, like, can you show compassion for a person in their journey where they're at? So to allow our friends and our partners or whoever else to be vulnerable, we're showing them compassion because it's not easy. And
hmm,
also, if necessary, there's forgiveness in it. And then again, you have surrender, you have submission. It all interplays together if we allow it to without shutting down, without judging first, and without getting attached to a certain path or perceived outcome.
yeah, yeah. I know an absolute truth in my being that vulnerability invites vulnerability. vulnerability invites vulnerability. And like that's a form of intimacy. And intimacy invites more intimacy. And that's the biggest thing too, because I used to be like, is people ready for this and so forth? I used to guard like, oh yeah, like, how deep can I go with someone? Let's do surface layer, like base level, conversations and so forth. But that is the biggest gift that you can give to someone else, but also give to yourself as well. Like you and your authentic expression is the most powerful energy that you could ever put out in the world. And that will invite the deeper conversations, whether it is a romantic partner, even like someone you just meet. Like the
Yeah.
conversations look different when you're just fully authentic. Vulnerability invites that in, and that's the deepest level of intimacy. Like that's where the real conversations are happening. That's what we all crave, right? And if we have any kind of relationships in our life, like that's what we really crave is
Mhm.
like intimacy, right? So sometimes, yeah, it does take a little bit of bravery, I guess, for you to pull that in. But even in those conversations that could feel sticky, having that be the mindset and the cheat code in the back end is like, yeah, this conversation might not feel super good in my body right now, but at the end of the day, this is intimacy. And the deeper you go there, the deeper that we're actually getting love for ourselves and others too, right? Like me expressing authentically and being vulnerable, that's the deepest form of love I can give to myself. It's one thing
Yeah.
like to have these thoughts in the head, but am I also going to express my fullness as well too? And that's freedom. I
Yeah.
mean, that's freedom. So that's the cheat code, V. You're onto it. You got it.
We got it. We're trailing in because like even for me when you're saying intimacy, I'm like, oh, like I like my body gets uncomfortable because
Hmm.
having an intimate relationship with yourself first,
Hmm.
whether that's in just being honest with yourself or the physical relationship that you have with yourself, right? Like, how do you
Hmm.
know yourself emotionally, spiritually, physically? A lot of people don't, and that's really hard. So if you can't be intimate and honest and vulnerable with yourself, not only do people feel that disconnect, but you're also attracting the exact thing that is going to push against that to one to challenge it, but two to make you really fucking uncomfortable. So you're either going to push through it or you're going to get more and more uncomfortable and close down and be like, oh, I don't like intimacy. And it's like, what do you mean? How can you not like intimacy? And it's like, because you're choosing to not connect with that deep pleasure, power, love, whatever it is with yourself. And,
Hmm.
I think that's why a lot of people are drawn to certain people in their energy, or they're like, oh my God, I feel so comfortable with you. I feel like I can say anything to you. And it's like, yeah, because they're not afraid of the vulnerability. They're not
Hmm.
afraid of the intimate, loving relationship that they have with themselves on their highest days and on their lowest when they're curled up in a ball, crying hysterically, just sobbing pain. And then the next minute, they're smiling again because they allow the waves to move so that when they're in interactions with people, people feel that and they feel safe and they feel loved and comfortable to be vulnerable, intimate, raw, and real. And that's all that we want is we crave those connections, but we don't even know sometimes why we're drawn to people or places.
Right.
But they're calling to us, asking for us to deepen and trust and just open back up because this way that we're living, like the ostrich with the head in the sand kind of thing, it's it's painful and it's very lonely.
Hmm. Yeah, that's it, man. It's like how many relationships can you think of previously before, you had your awakening or healing journey to where it was like you felt really alone in those relationships. Like I can look back and I think it was really a big shift for me too, is obviously that first Fit for Service summit that I met you at and those relationships in this house. Like I came in and was not really introduced to that work and that environment and so forth. And I had this whole theme that I was kind of a lone wolf. I had great friendships. And I came into the house and I was like, man, I had this concept. It was like, how much time have you been with a friend? Like, how long have you known somebody? If those are like your best and closest friends, but it's not time, it's
Mhm.
intimacy. I'm like that 1 week I spent with you guys in that house and all of our housemates up there. It's like those are deeper relationships than some of the relationships I had my whole life. And I'm
Yeah.
like, man, like it was kind of sad for me. I'm like, we just never had the space to go intimate together. I wasn't able to let myself be seen because I didn't know myself and I finally had that compassion for myself and so forth. But it's like at the end of the day, we are social creatures. We're not supposed to be doing it alone. And these base level conversations about talking about other people, gossiping, the news, all those types of things, it's like what we really crave is deep intimate connections.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes us to start them. And it's not a manipulative tactic. And I kind of want to kind of reframe because at some point, like I was kind of gamifying it, and that wasn't with good intentions, because I would read people, right? Like I don't know if this previous like childhood trauma or whatever it is, but reading the room, like I'm reading your face to see if you get it the whole time. And that had to be a huge shift that Spirit was nudging me out of, to where it's like, Tyler, just speak your truth. Stop reading the room. If it lands, it lands. Sometimes it's not. It's just about awakening. It's about awakening. And sometimes it might not even be receptive in that conversation. It could just be the energetics of that conversation where, like, wow, they meet you and it's like, V, you don't hold back. I admire that about you. You'll say direct. I never have to second guess what's on your mind or if you're withholding anything or anything like that. And that is inspiring. And that's better than having to read the room or the friend. Are you withholding something, passive aggression, this or stuff like that? It's like, no, it's like the energetics behind that is inspiring. Even if that conversation doesn't shift or go somewhere that you hope it does, it's not attachment to the outcome, but the energetics behind us just putting out our full expression, speaking our truth in real time. That is ultimately our full authentic expression, is the best energetics we can be in, right?
Yeah. Couldn't have said it better myself. And also, I'm like, thank you for the feedback. I'm like, what a compliment. Because it's like I never used to be that way. I cared so much about what other people
Yeah.
thought. I wanted
Mhm.
to be loved. I wanted to be included. I was like, I will chameleon myself to whatever group of people or
Mhm.
individual person I am with. And I had
Mhm.
12 different personalities and a raging eating disorder and huge insecurities. And then as I started to do the work and get honest and vulnerable and like really sitting with myself, I was like, I don't like any of this shit. Like,
Mhm.
like you said, I don't want to talk about real housewives of blah, blah, blah. I don't care what they're doing. I don't, we don't have to agree on everything and not every conversation has to be super deep. But if
Right.
we don't have the capacity to drop in once in a while, whether it's in my friendships or in my relationships, I don't want it. I don't choose
Mhm.
it. We reach a stage in our life where we can be very selective and we give ourselves permission to remove and bring in as we see fit. So once you do that, then life becomes a little bit lighter. Your energy becomes a little bit more amplified, and you're very quick to identify what is or isn't in alignment. And of course, tact with how you communicate it is super important. But a lot of people, even in the most tactful of kind ways, are not going to be receptive to it because they're still living in the chameleon mindset and in the socially acceptable constructs. And
Mhm.
then you start to push them, they kind of are like, oh crap, like what the heck just happened? And then they start to wander down a journey. So we all get to kind of pinball off of one another.
Mhm.
And you hope that there's a little impact that happens. But to be authentic is to be alive. And it's to be free, like you said earlier. So, we are like life is already hard enough. There's already going to be suffering and pain and loss. Why are we self-inflicting it every single day when we look in the mirror? Or in
Mhm.
interactions or conversations where we'll just sit there quietly and agree while knowing that it is a hard no.
Right.
We just go, yeah, of course. And then we're mad and we're bitter and resentful later. And
Right.
then we lash out and we do these things that create horrible consequences. And then there's no accountability.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting too, because like obviously chameleon of the room you mentioned, it was interesting too, because it was like I'm a people person. Like I get lit up by being in groups of people, but I also need deep rest. And it's like there are some times too, like, where you're just not there for like a deep conversation and so forth. And I would even hold that to my standard. It's like this person's craving intimacy. I gotta be on and be like fully tapped in and so forth. But like how much like safer and peaceful does it feel that you can just like rest in? It's just like being in each other's presence as well too. Like to where I was adapting, and people would say it often because I'll come in high energy, that's how I am typically, like big, bold, and so forth, especially at our facilities. And if I'm not on, people are like, Tyler, you upset and so forth. Like if I am a little tired, so I have to like gut check that sometimes. But it's also like, what are those relationships like? Yes, we can go deep and intimate, but also just like the ministry of presence, like just being with each other. You can just rest in. You don't have to showboat. You don't have to be on too. It's like
Yeah.
that's ultimate freedom and rest too, to where it's like we all want to be around individuals. We are supposed to be social, connected creatures. But at the same point, it's like on deep. That was something I had to reframe from early on in my journey too, to where I'm like, yeah, if we're not going deep, then this relationship isn't it. I'm like, no, man. It's like actually this my full authentic expression right now is I'm a little tired. can just rest into this, sit on the couch, whatever. Like, it doesn't have to be on either, too, right? So
But isn't that
super
so
relevant.
But isn't it so funny how our ability to sit with ourselves in solitude and silence and in stillness is so triggering to other people? Like I can drive in the car with no music and or be in my house in complete silence, just with myself, my thoughts, doing what I'm doing. It triggers the hell out of my business partner. He'll act like he's not triggered, but he's like, "Oh my God, like you're like a psycho. You're crazy. Why do you sit in silence?" I'm like, "Because I'm unbothered." When I want music in my house, when I want movement, when I want activation and energy, I seek it. And
Hmm.
when I don't, I'm okay with that too. It doesn't have to be all the time,
Hmm.
like every single day. It's too much. Like I get overstimulated and and I think that a lot of people they struggle with that. So they're like they want to fix it. What's wrong? Why are you
Yeah.
sad? Are you okay? Why are you acting quiet? Are you going to cry? No, I'm just sitting. I'm
Yeah.
processing.
Yeah.
I'm at peace or I'm just allowing this moment to sink in before I say something, before I react. And people get really stressed out because they're seeing that as a projection of going, they must be mad. There must be a way I can fix this. What can I do? Is it something that I
Hmm.
did? And then that's like the story that snowballs. And all of a sudden you're like, wait, how did I go from sitting with myself in silence to now I'm like helping you process your emotions?
Yeah.
Like the two things aren't even correlated.
It's so funny bringing this up. Literally, we were having the conversation last night. Me and Jamie, my romantic partner, we were literally talking about this conversation last night because there's memes I've seen and stuff online where it's like, yeah, you start going through your spiritual awakening, you turn into a psychopath, driving with no music on or nothing on. And I have caught myself that recently to where like we get in the car, I very rarely turn anything on. And drive times used to be a lot for me, especially if I'm alone. It's my audio, like audiobooks and podcasts and stuff like that. But majority of the time I even drive this more is like there's just no stimulus and it's the check-in, right? It's like I think the more and more you can get still, and I think that's something that, I struggle with too, is like having some kind of stimulus on, whether it's like TV on or music or having some kind of stimulus is like the more you get still and get comfortable there, the more you crave it too, right? To where like, I'd be lying if there wasn't some times where she's checking in, are you okay? Like those types of things with good intentions, but but the silence in the car and like the silence in general and just being sometimes is off kilter for a lot of people just because they haven't experienced that a lot,
Mhm.
right? It's like I'm around people all day, meetings and our families and our communities, which is beautiful, but it's like I like stillness and just quietness with self is like something I crave. And maybe I am the psychopath in the meme now. It's so
100%.
funny. We were just having this conversation last night. That's hilarious.
Like just put my clown nose on, put me in the car with you, and we'll just like
Yeah,
ride in
yeah,
silence. Like
yeah, yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome.